Having the right people in your corner for life's biggest milestones makes all the difference. Like a friend who's there when you're house hunting or checking out a new ride, State Farm is there too, helping you choose the coverage you need. With a State Farm agent, you know someone is there to help you along the way. And with so many coverage options, it's nice knowing you have help choosing a plan that fits your needs, so you can continue celebrating all of life's milestones. Head to statefarm.com to get a quote. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scary. If you are new here, my name is Will, and each week I narrate your real life paranormal experiences as well as cover some famous paranormal cases along the way. Before we get into this week's episode, I need to say a special thank you to our new Patreon subscribers who are Charlotte Jane, Olivia Nestor, Joe Raven, Tara Cope, Lauren Blows, Gabrielle Reiter, Natalie Cooley, Midnight Snow White, Andrew Hull and Jack Roberts. Thank you so much for signing up to the show's Patreon. It really does mean the world to me. And if this is something that you're interested in, you can find the link in this episode show notes, or simply go to patreon.com/scaryaparanormalpodcast. Over there you can gain access to ad-free main episodes as well as exclusive scary episodes. I have 3 paranormal experiences for you in this episode, so now, let's get into our first. This was back in December 2020. I was staying at my cousin's place in South Hart, North Dakota. If you've never heard of it, it's a really small town, maybe 300 people. Mostly farmers and oilfield workers. My cousin's house always felt like it had a bit of a story to it. The guy who built it, Tony, was a farmer and a rancher. He retired sometime in the late 70s. Tony built the house right on the edge of town, and he lived there until he passed away in the late 1990s. Not long after that, my cousin and his family moved in. I remember when we were kids, my cousin would sometimes talk about hearing strange noises in the house, but it was never anything too crazy. I never really paid much attention, and honestly, nothing ever happened to me, at least not until one Friday night in 2020. So this guy Tony, who had built a house, he had put this bar down in the basement, and from what I heard, he used to throw these huge parties that packed out the place. The thing is, my cousin's dad is a bit of a collector, so for years the basement was just crammed full of antiques and old farm toys. You could barely move down there. But right before all of this happened, he decided to have an auction and cleared out a lot of stuff. And suddenly, there was all this space, and my cousin and I were actually excited to finally use the bar for the way it was meant to be used. I remember stopping by after work one Friday and just looking forward to hanging out. It was still light outside and we were both in a good mood. We sat down at the bar and hooked up my phone to a Bluetooth speaker and put on some Waylon Jennings. My cousin and I are a bit old school like that. We cracked open our first beers, and I remember raising mine and saying something like, "Here's to Tony," just to pay our respects. When you do that, I don't think you expect anything to happen. About 30 seconds later, I was right in the middle of talking when there was this loud popping sound and then a streak of orange light shot right across the bar top in front of us. It almost looked like fireworks, but inside. And my cousin and I just stared at each other, completely stunned. I think the first words out of my mouth was, "I'm glad you saw that too." After that, we kind of went back to our drinks and pretended nothing had happened. But honestly, I was pretty shaken up. We weren't really scared, but it definitely threw me. Since then, nothing else weird has happened in the house. And I like to think that maybe Tony just wanted to see his bar being used again after all those years. And maybe that's all he needed. Thank you to Drew for sending in our first paranormal experience. And now, let's get into our second. Back in 1981, I was 18 and living with my parents in Nailsworth, Gloucestershire. I was at a local art college then. I was still seeing my boyfriend from school, Mark. He lived about 10 miles away, but he had a motorbike. So a couple of evenings a week he'd come over around 5 p.m, have dinner with us, and then afterwards we'd go for a walk. I can't remember exactly which month it was, just that it was summer and the weather was good. We'd gotten into this habit of heading out after dinner, mostly to escape my parents for a bit and have a chat, maybe a kiss, and enjoy the evening sun. On this particular evening, we decided to walk up the Minchinhampton Common. If you don't know it, it's this big open bit of grassland quite high up out of the valley. And you get to this place by going up a winding hill. The common sort of links the Stroud Valleys to the Minchinhampton village, and then Nailsworth is on the other side. It's surrounded by those lovely old Cotswold villages, all honey-coloured stone, and there's always cows wandering about up there. After dinner, my mum handed us a thermos of cold lemonade to take with us. We were just planning to stop at a pub for cider on the way back, but we didn't mention it to her. Took the lemonade and off we went. We walked through the town centre and then up this steep winding road on the north side, heading for the track that runs along the top of the common. The track sits just below this rocky outcrop. It was like a proper hike in this heat, and by the time we got onto the track and it flattened out a bit, we were both pretty much out of breath. We'd both done this walk a load of times, and we knew the area really well. It was a nice, quiet spot. I reckon it was around 7:30, and we stopped and we sat down. The view over the trees to the town and the valley was lovely. I remember we sat down for a rest at one point, and commenting that there was no breeze, the trees weren't moving at all. And we just drank some of this lemonade. And as we sat there, we heard what I would describe as this rustling and thudding noise that was behind us. It was odd because it had been so quiet and I couldn't see anyone or anything around us. And I remember turning around and saying to Mark, "What was that?" And him saying, "I don't know." Honestly, I think that we both thought maybe it was a cow coming down off the common. They do that sometimes, especially if it was going to rain or bad weather. But I couldn't see one. Neither could Mark. Mark just said someone must have walked by, but we didn't see them. I wouldn't say that convinced me, if I'm honest. There wasn't really that much space between us. There was the drop and the cliff wall behind it. You would have noticed. So, just as I'm about to take another sip from the thermos, we heard another rustling noise. It sounded like somebody coming out of long grass, except there wasn't any. And then everything happened really fast. Mark suddenly stood up and I spun around, and my first thought was, it must be a cow right behind me, and I was still sitting down, so it was a little bit too close for comfort. Having a cow that close with a sheer drop in front of me was not ideal. What we both saw in that moment, we couldn't make sense of what it was at all. We kept asking each other, what was that? And replying saying, I don't know. I just remember feeling calm and staring at it, and Mark said, it hasn't got any legs, it's not connected to the ground. And then he started scrambling down the slope, grabbing at rocks and bits of vegetation, and I just kept staring, and he stopped and shouted, Sarah, it's still there, come on. I don't know if I was frozen to the spot or if my brain just wanted to figure out what I was looking at, but I didn't move. I continued to stare, trying to take it all in. And at this point, Mark was skidding and sliding down. And the more I looked, the more scared I got, because I couldn't understand it at all. Mark was right. This thing wasn't touching the ground. It was floating. It wasn't a person. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't really an object. It was just a shape with dark and light bits. Some parts were opaque. Some were see-through, mostly drab brown and grey. And it was about 3 feet above the ground, not moving, just stationary. Eventually I started to move away and climb down, and I was still slowly keeping my eyes on this whole thing. The two of us just scrambled down this slope. After about 20 feet, I remember looking back and it was still there. And I really started to panic at that point, and I just took off down the rest of the slope to catch up with Mark. When we looked back, it was gone. We just kept saying to each other, what the hell was that? What did we just see? Eventually we got to the road at the bottom, and I looked down and our jeans were ripped and our knees were bloodied. Mark was terrified, and that made me even more scared. And by now it was starting to get a little bit dark, and we just ran all the way back to town. When we got back to my parents' house, my dad was in the kitchen. I do remember us running in and blurted out, "Oh my god, Dad, we've just seen something so weird, can't explain it." And then I burst into tears, and Dad looked really worried and was asking us what sort of thing. And Mark and I both started talking at once, and my mum came in and she said, "Do you mean like a ghost?" And I said, "I guess so, but I thought ghosts were supposed to look like people." And I remember Dad going off and coming back with a sketchbook and a pencil, and he told us to draw it. And of course we didn't have mobile phones back then, or I would have taken a photo. I had plenty of time. And I started drawing, and I filled a few pages with shaded sketch of the shape and the different markings and tones. And my mum looked over my shoulder and she said, "You know, it kind of looks like a shield." And we talked about that and wondered if maybe it was a shield, like a Roman one, or if someone was holding it. Would it be the right height off the ground? And Mark and I both thought it's a possibility, yeah. I think my dad saw a chance for a bit of education, and he suggested that I go to the library, again, no internet back then, and ask about Romans in the area or other armies. I ended up going to the library and I found out a bit, but over the years I kind of forgot about it, only telling the story to my friends now and then. It never felt that spooky to me, I think because it wasn't a person-shaped thing. And then in 2018, I got some info that made me think again. I was at this social event for the Gloucestershire magazine and got chatting to one of the writers. And he was really into Saxon Long Barrow burial grounds around the Common and the Roman communities from Woodchester, Roman Villa just west of Nailsworth along the Fosse Way. This guy ends up telling me that Roman soldiers used to walk that way to Bath to check their stronghold. And it got my attention. And I asked, would they have had to go via Nailsworth? And he reckoned that it was the only way unless you wanted a massive detour. I ended up telling him about my experience and he was fascinated. I learned loads that afternoon. Did we see a Roman soldier? Maybe one who had been sleeping in the caves? Did we just see the shield or not the person? Or was it something else? Something that wasn't from here at all? I don't know. Mark would never talk about that evening or anything to do with it. My parents, who were really down to earth, said afterwards that they had to take us seriously because they could see fear in our eyes. They'd never seen me in a state like that before. The day it happened, Mark ended up staying the night on the couch because he was too scared to ride home. We did talk about it for a bit afterwards, but years later, after we'd split up and stayed friends, I tried to bring it up when we were out with a group at a pub, and he got up and walked out. I think he might have felt bad for leaving me and making his way down the slope without me, but he would never talk about what we saw. It was only because he was there that I knew I hadn't imagined it. I guess it's not your usual ghost story, but it's definitely a strange one. There's loads of history in that area, not just Roman, but I still think a shield makes the most sense with the Roman villa and the Roman road so close by, but honestly, I don't know. Thank you to Sarah for sending in our second paranormal experience. And now, let's get into our last. My experience happened when I lived in Mill Street, Crediton, Devon. In early 2009, I moved into Mill Street. I was 18, and this was the first time I had moved out of home. It was a shared house with friends who were a couple. The house was old, very damp, and had pound meters to run the electric and gas. The electric meter was by the front door and the gas meter was in the loft. The loft hatch was above the spiral staircase, so if you fell, you would fall all the way down. So we rarely used the gas. The house was freezing and we had cold showers more often than not. And these meters were extremely expensive to run. Ice would form on the inside windows during the winter. It was very much a party house. The couple I lived with didn't work, so they would party whenever, and they did. So the house was always full of unemployed friends, and on the weekend it was always fun chaos with everyone. I started dating a guy named Lewis, and he basically moved into my bedroom in Mill Street with me straight away, but still rented his own unit. Strange things would happen around the house. Things would move. There would be footsteps. The feeling of someone watching you. My guitar strings would play and the cats would go crazy at the corner. It just became the norm, but it was still unnerving, especially when the electricity would run out at night. Me and Lewis were together for a few months and then we broke up. I had all his stuff in my bedroom, which one day that week when everyone was out, I decided to go through my bedroom and put all his stuff into a pile, so when he would come over and pick it up, it would just be easy to get later that day. I was listening to his CD player whilst going through his stuff. I was quite upset. So I'm going through his stuff and I noticed that the volume on the CD player was getting louder and louder. So I ended up going over and looking at the player, and I watched the volume button turn and the numbers go up and up. It got super loud. I don't know why, but I instinctively cursed at the CD player and told it to stop. And it instantly stopped. It was really odd. Later, he came over and collected his stuff. And a couple of weeks later, he messaged me and asked to come over. He ended up coming over, and I remember our dog Griffin was not happy at all. He was growling. He was not happy that Lewis was back in the home. He eventually settled down, and we went to my bedroom. We chatted for a bit, and he apologised and said that he had made a huge mistake. And after a really long chat, we ended up getting back together. He then asked if I had done anything to his CD player because it didn't work after he picked it up. I did tell him what happened to it, but I don't know if he believed me or not. Fast forward to Christmas that year, and my housemates went abroad to see family, which meant that we had the place to ourselves. We both got Christmas and New Year off work, so it was great. So we cleaned up the house and plugged in the electric heater, which we didn't normally use, but considering it was just the two of us, we thought it wouldn't cost that much. Make it cozy. That year was pretty deep snow, and our housemates ended up getting snowed in the area that they stayed in for longer than they thought, and we ended up looking after the cats and dogs. It was a really nice time. It was just the two of us, and we'd have some friends over. One of the nights that we were there, we were both brushing our teeth in the upstairs bathroom, and all of a sudden we hear what sounds like pots and pans being thrown around the kitchen downstairs. It completely stopped us in our tracks. Someone was in the house. We initially end up thinking that it's the animals. We go check on them, and they're mainly asleep or resting. I remember Lewis took out his phone, and he was either going to call the police or his dad. And we stood there for a few minutes whilst all this noise was going on, and then it just stopped. Eventually, we both made it downstairs and had a look around, and nothing had moved. Everything was clean and tidy, just how we left it. It was a really weird experience. I still don't know where that sound came from. Thank you to Katie for sending in our final paranormal experience. Don't forget, if you have your own paranormal experience that you'd like me to narrate on the show, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com, and it just might get made into a future episode. Or if there's a famous paranormal case that you'd like me to cover, why not let me know by sending an email or sending me a message on Instagram. The links for everything you need can be found in the episode's show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to hit that follow button so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening, and join me next time for another episode of Scary.
They don't realize smart people use smartphones, huh? Seeing through BS they thought was gonna slide. Download Text Now, cause it cuts out clownery. You can literally activate it from your couch. Nationwide 5G with the same towers the other companies use. Pay what you want or not at all. You're in control. Show these ridiculous carriers we ain't paying for stupid. Because we're way too smart to pay dumb.
Free app-based talk and text via the Text Now app requires Wi-Fi or data connection. Data plans sold separately. 5G where available.